Min-jun Park sat in his old sedan across the street from Burger Palace. The morning sun reflected off the restaurant's glass windows. He checked his watch. It was almost 10 in the morning. The breakfast rush was ending and the lunch crowd had not started yet. This was the perfect time. He looked at the folder on his passenger seat. Inside were dozens of complaint forms. People had written about this restaurant for months. The complaints were all similar. Rude staff, dirty kitchen, workers treated badly, customers insulted and mocked. Some elderly people said the staff laughed at their accents. Others said they were given wrong orders on purpose. Min-jun had been a health and labor inspector for 12 years. He had seen many bad restaurants, but Burger Palace had more complaints than most places he investigated. The state office sent him to check this place undercover. That meant he would go inside like a normal customer. He would watch. He would listen. He would see if the complaints were true. He grabbed his baseball cap from the back seat and put it on. He wore old jeans and a plain gray hoodie. Nothing special. He looked like any other person who wanted a burger for lunch. That was exactly what he needed. Min-jun got out of his car and walked across the parking lot. The restaurant looked clean from the outside. There were colorful posters in the windows advertising new menu items. But Min-jun knew that outside appearance meant nothing. The real truth was always inside. He pushed open the glass door. A small bell rang above his head. The inside of the restaurant was not very busy. Only a few customers sat at tables eating their meals. The smell of fried food filled the air. Pop music played softly from speakers in the ceiling. Behind the counter stood 3 workers. Min-jun studied them carefully. On the left was a young woman with her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her name tag said Ji-won Kim, shift manager. She was probably in her mid-20s. She leaned against the counter looking at her phone. Her face showed boredom and annoyance. Next to her was another young woman. Her name tag read Hana Lee. She looked younger, maybe 20 or 21. She was also on her phone, showing something to Ji-won. Both of them laughed at whatever they were looking at. Neither one looked at the dining area to see if customers needed anything. Through the kitchen window, Min-jun could see a young man working at the grill. His name tag said Tae-min Choi. He flipped burgers and seemed focused on his work. Unlike the 2 women at the counter, he looked serious and careful. Min-jun walked to an empty table near the counter. He sat down and pretended to look at the menu on the wall, but he was really watching everything around him. The front door opened again. An elderly woman came in slowly. She used a walking cane and moved carefully across the tile floor. She wore a nice blue coat and had white hair. She approached the counter with a gentle smile on her face. "Hello," the elderly woman said. Her voice had a thick accent. "I would like to order, please." Ji-won looked up from her phone. She did not smile back. Instead, she sighed loudly. "Yeah, what do you want?" Her tone was cold and impatient. The elderly woman looked at the menu board above the counter. "I would like, the chicken sandwich meal, please, with the small fries." "What?" Ji-won said loudly. "I can't understand you." "Say it again." The elderly woman's smile faded a little. "The chicken sandwich meal," she repeated more slowly. "With small fries." Hana turned to look at the elderly woman. She leaned close to Ji-won and whispered something. Both young women started giggling. They tried to hide their laughter behind their hands, but it was obvious what they were doing. Min-jun felt his jaw tighten. He kept watching. "Small what?" Ji-won said, even though the elderly woman had spoken clearly. "You need to speak better English if you want to order here." The elderly woman's face turned red. She looked embarrassed and hurt. I am trying," she said quietly. "Please, the chicken meal with small fries." "Oh, now I understand," Ji-won said in a mocking tone. She rolled her eyes at Hana. Both of them smiled meanly. Ji-won slowly typed the order into her computer, taking much longer than necessary. The elderly woman paid with cash. Her hands shook slightly as she counted out the bills. Ji-won grabbed the money without saying thank you. She gave back the change by dropping it on the counter instead of placing it in the woman's hand. "Your order will be ready when it's ready," Ji-won said dismissively. "Just wait over there." The elderly woman nodded and moved to the side. She looked down at the floor. Her earlier smile was completely gone. She looked sad and small. Min-jun could see that her feelings were hurt badly. He made a mental note of everything he saw. This was exactly the type of behavior the complaints described. But he needed to see more. He needed to experience it himself. A few minutes later, a man in a construction uniform came in. He had dirt on his boots and his hands looked rough from hard work. His clothes were dusty and worn. He looked tired, like he had been working outside all morning. "Hi there," the construction worker said politely. "Can I get 2 cheeseburgers and a large soda?" Ji-won looked at him from head to toe. Her nose wrinkled like she smelled something bad. "You're getting the floor dirty," she said rudely. The construction worker looked down at his boots. "Oh, sorry about that. I came straight from the job site. I'm really hungry." "Whatever," Ji-won muttered. She put in his order quickly, clearly wanting him to leave as fast as possible. "That'll be $12.50. The man paid and waited. When his order came out, Taemin had prepared it and put it in a bag. The construction worker took his food and found a table in the corner. He sat down and opened his bag. Min-jun watched as the man pulled out his burgers. The construction worker looked confused. He checked inside both burger wrappers. Then he got up and went back to the counter. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I ordered cheeseburgers, but these are plain burgers." "No cheese?" Ji-won barely looked at him. "That's what you ordered?" "No, I clearly said cheeseburgers," the man insisted gently. "I said it twice." Hana stepped forward. "Are you calling us liars? You probably said it wrong. Everyone tries to blame us when they mess up their own orders." The construction worker's face showed frustration. "I know what I ordered. Can you please just add cheese to these burgers?" "We can't do that," Ji-won said flatly. "If you want to pay for new burgers with cheese, that's extra money. Otherwise, eat what you got." The construction worker looked at both women. He seemed to realize that arguing would not help. He shook his head slowly and walked back to his table. He ate his plain burgers in silence, but his face showed disappointment and anger. Min-jun had seen enough for now. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and wrote down everything he witnessed. He wrote about Ji-won's rude behavior. He wrote about how they mocked the elderly woman's accent. He wrote about how they gave the construction worker the wrong order and refused to fix it. But these were just customer service problems. Min-jun needed to check for health and safety violations too. He needed to see the kitchen. He needed to ask questions. And most importantly, he needed to experience their rudeness himself. He stood up from his table and walked toward the counter. Ji-won and Hana were back on their phones again, completely ignoring the dining area. They did not even notice him approaching until he was right in front of the counter. Min-jun put on a friendly smile. His heart beat a little faster. This was the moment everything would begin. He was about to test them. He was about to see exactly how bad things really were at Burger Palace. "Hello," he said in a polite, cheerful voice. "I'd like to place an order, please." Ji-won looked up slowly from her phone. She stared at him without any expression on her face. She did not smile. She did not greet him. She just waited, looking annoyed that he interrupted her phone time. Min-jun kept smiling. "I have a few questions about the menu first, if that's okay." Ji-won let out a long, loud sigh. She glanced at Hana and rolled her eyes. "This is going to be one of those customers," she muttered, just loud enough for Min-jun to hear. Min-jun's smile did not change. But inside he felt calm and ready. His investigation was about to move into the next phase. He was about to give them every chance to treat him with basic respect and dignity, and he already knew they would fail that test completely. Min-jun kept his friendly expression as he looked at the menu board above the counter. Ji-won stood there with her arms crossed, clearly showing her impatience. Hana had put her phone in her pocket but looked equally annoyed. "I'd like to know about your allergen information," Min-jun said calmly. "Do your chicken sandwiches have any dairy products in the breading?" Ji-won stared at him like he had just asked the most ridiculous question in the world. "It's just chicken," she said flatly. "Yes, but sometimes the breading contains milk or butter," Min-jun explained. "I have a family member with a dairy allergy, so I need to be careful." Hana leaned forward and spoke in a tone that sounded both bored and condescending. "Dude, it's just fast food. It's not a 5-star restaurant. If your family member has problems with food, maybe they shouldn't eat here." Min-jun noticed several things in that moment. First, neither worker offered to check the ingredients list. Second, they showed no concern for customer safety. Third, they were becoming hostile over a simple, reasonable question. He kept his voice calm and polite. "I understand. Could you perhaps check the ingredient information?" Most restaurants have that available for customers. Ji-won let out another dramatic sigh. Look, we're busy. Do you want to order something or not? There are other customers waiting. Min-jun glanced behind him. The restaurant was nearly empty. Only the elderly woman and the construction worker sat at their tables. No one was waiting in line. Ji-won was obviously lying. All right, Min-jun said, keeping his tone friendly. I'll have a double cheeseburger meal with a medium fries and a cola. Could I also get a chicken sandwich plain with no sauce? And could you make sure the fries are fresh, please? Sure, whatever. Ji-won mumbled as she punched buttons on the register. She did not repeat the order back to him. She did not ask if he wanted anything else. She just stared at the screen with a bored expression. While Ji-won processed the order, Min-jun looked toward the kitchen area. He could see through the service window. What he observed made him deeply concerned. Taemin was cooking, but he kept touching his phone with his gloves on. Then he went back to handling food with those same gloves. That was a clear health code violation. Gloves that touched phones should never touch food. Min-jun also noticed something else. On the prep counter in the back, he could see several containers of vegetables and sauces. They were not covered. They were just sitting open in the air. That was another violation. All prepared food needed to be covered or refrigerated properly. Through the window, he could also see a clipboard hanging on the wall. It looked like a temperature log sheet, but from what Min-jun could see, many of the spaces were empty. Temperature logs needed to be filled out every few hours to make sure food was stored safely. These logs looked like they had not been filled out in days. That'll be $18.75, Ji-won announced, interrupting his observations. Min-jun paid with a $20 bill. Ji-won gave him his change by practically throwing it on the counter. Coins rolled in different directions. She handed him a receipt without looking at him. Wait over there, she said, pointing to the pickup area. Then she immediately went back to her phone. Min-jun moved to the waiting area. He stood there and continued watching. Ji-won and Hana started talking to each other, completely ignoring everything else around them. They talked about their plans for the weekend. They talked about people they knew. They laughed loudly about inside jokes. Neither of them looked at the kitchen to check on orders. Neither of them looked at the dining area to see if customers needed anything. About 8 minutes later, Taemin called out from the kitchen. Order up for table 3. Ji-won walked over slowly, picked up the bag and brought it to the counter. She set it down hard. Here, she said to Min-jun without any warmth or courtesy. Min-jun took the bag and walked to a nearby table. He sat down and opened it carefully. He pulled out the items one by one. A burger wrapper, a container of fries, a cup of soda, another burger wrapper. He opened the first burger wrapper. It was a double cheeseburger, but it had lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, and sauce all over it. He had not ordered any vegetables or sauce. This was wrong. He checked the second wrapper. Inside was a crispy chicken sandwich with sauce. He had specifically asked for it plain with no sauce. This was also wrong. He looked at the fries. They were cold and limp. They were clearly not fresh. They looked like they had been sitting under a heat lamp for a long time. Both parts of his order were wrong. The fries were not fresh as he requested. Everything was incorrect. Min-jun stood up and walked back to the counter. He kept his expression calm and neutral. Ji-won was showing Hana something on her phone. Both women were giggling. They did not notice him standing there until he cleared his throat. Excuse me, Min-jun said politely. I'm sorry, but my order is not correct. Ji-won looked up with immediate irritation on her face. What's wrong with it? I ordered a plain double cheeseburger with no vegetables or sauce, but this one has everything on it. I also asked for a plain chicken sandwich with no sauce, but this one has sauce, and the fries are cold. Ji-won grabbed the bag from Min-jun's hands and looked inside. She pulled out the burgers and checked them. Then she looked directly at Min-jun with a challenging expression. That's what you ordered, she said firmly. No, I specifically said plain burgers with no sauce, Min-jun replied calmly. I said it clearly when I ordered. Hana stepped closer to the counter. We made exactly what you asked for. You probably didn't say it clearly. A lot of customers mumble and then blame us when their order is wrong. Min-jun felt his professional instincts sharpen. This was a pattern. First the construction worker, now him. They were deliberately getting orders wrong or claiming customers were at fault. This was either incompetence or intentional behavior to avoid responsibility. I spoke very clearly, Min-jun said, keeping his voice level. I'd appreciate it if you could remake these items correctly. And could I also get fresh fries? Ji-won's face twisted with annoyance. She raised her voice, speaking loudly enough that other customers could hear. Sir, we made your order exactly right. If you didn't say what you wanted clearly, that's your problem, not ours. Several people in the restaurant turned to look. The elderly woman glanced over nervously. The construction worker watched with interest, probably remembering his own experience. I'm not trying to cause any trouble, Minjun said calmly. I'm simply asking for the order I paid for. That seems reasonable. Hana crossed her arms and spoke up again. You know what? I bet you're one of those people who tries to get free food by complaining. We see it all the time. People order food, eat half of it, then claim it's wrong so they can get more for free. I haven't eaten anything, Minjun pointed out. Everything is still in the wrappers. I'm just asking for what I ordered and paid for. Ji-won shook her head dramatically. I don't have time for this. We made your food right. If you have a problem with it, that's too bad. We're not remaking anything. Minjun took a slow breath. He was giving them every opportunity to do the right thing. Every opportunity to provide basic customer service. Every opportunity to fix a simple mistake. They were refusing all of it. May I speak with the manager, please? Minjun asked in a calm, professional tone. This seemed to make Ji-won even more angry. She laughed in a mean way. A manager? Are you serious right now? The owner doesn't have time to deal with complainers like you. He has a real business to run. I would still like to speak with whoever is in charge, Minjun insisted politely. I'm in charge right now, Ji-won said, pointing to her name tag. I'm the shift manager, and I'm telling you that your order is fine. If you don't like it, you can leave. Minjun reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened the camera app and started taking pictures of the receipt, the food, and the incorrect orders. What are you doing? Ji-won demanded. You can't take pictures in here. I'm documenting what I ordered versus what I received, Minjun explained calmly. This is for my own records. Ji-won's face turned red with anger. Stop taking pictures right now. This is private property. I'm telling you to stop. Hana pulled out her own phone. If you don't stop, we're calling the police. You're harassing us, Minjun continued, taking photos calmly. I have the right to document the product I purchased. I'm not photographing any employees or other customers. Just my food and receipt. That's it, Ji-won said loudly. I'm refusing service to you. You're being difficult and disruptive. You need to leave this restaurant right now. Other customers were now openly watching the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked sympathetic toward Minjun. A couple of people even had their phones out, apparently recording the interaction. Minjun put his phone back in his pocket. He looked directly at Ji-won and Hana. His face remained calm and neutral. Inside, he was carefully noting every single thing they said and did. Every violation. Every rude comment, every refusal to provide basic service. I'm a paying customer who received incorrect food, Minjun said clearly. I've been polite and reasonable. All I've asked for is what I paid for. Is there really no one else I can speak with? There's no one else, Ji-won snapped. And I'm done talking to you. Take your food and go or leave it here. I don't care. But get out of my restaurant. Your restaurant, Minjun said quietly. Are you the owner? I'm the manager on duty, which means I'm in charge, Ji-won said loudly. And I'm telling you to get out before I have you removed. Minjun stood there for a long moment. He looked at Ji-won's angry face. He looked at Hana's defensive posture. He glanced back at the kitchen where Tai-min stood watching nervously. He saw the other customers staring at the scene. He had given them every chance. Every possible opportunity to treat him with basic dignity and respect. They had failed completely. They had been rude, dismissive, and hostile. They had refused to fix a simple mistake. They had accused him of lying and trying to scam them. They had ordered him to leave. Now it was time for the next phase of his investigation. Minjun remained standing at the counter. His expression stayed completely calm. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He simply stood there looking at Ji-won with steady eyes. I'll ask one more time, Minjun said quietly but clearly. Is there anyone above you that I can speak with? A general manager? A district manager? The owner? Ji-won's face showed pure irritation now. I already told you no, the owner, Mr. Patterson, is not here. He doesn't deal with customers. That's my job. And my job right now is to tell you to leave. Hana nodded in agreement. Yeah, you need to go. You're causing a scene and making other customers uncomfortable. Min Jun glanced around the restaurant. The elderly woman sat at her table watching nervously. The construction worker looked interested in what was happening. 2 other customers who had come in during the argument were standing near the door, uncertain whether to stay or leave. None of them looked uncomfortable with Min Jun. They looked uncomfortable with Ji-won's behavior. I don't think I'm the one making people uncomfortable, Min Jun said calmly. That comment seemed to make Ji-won even more angry. Her voice got louder. Are you seriously arguing with me right now? I'm the manager. What I say goes. And I'm saying get out! Min Jun slowly pulled his phone back out of his pocket. Ji-won's eyes widened with anger when she saw it. I told you to stop with the phone, she shouted. Put that away right now! I'm going to make a call, Min Jun explained calmly. Since you won't let me speak with your boss, I need to contact someone who can help resolve this situation. If you're calling the police, go ahead, Hana said boldly. They'll tell you the same thing we are. We have the right to refuse service to anyone. Min Jun started pressing numbers on his phone. Ji-won and Hana watched him with angry faces. They seemed confident that they were in the right. They seemed certain that no one could do anything to them. While Min Jun made his call, more things happened in the background. Taemin came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He looked worried as he watched the situation. His face showed concern, not anger. Hey Ji-won, Taemin said quietly. Maybe we should just remake his order. It's not a big deal. Ji-won whipped around to face him. Stay out of this, Taemin. Go back to the kitchen and do your job. I'll handle the front. Taemin looked like he wanted to say more, but he stayed quiet. He glanced at Min Jun with an apologetic expression, then slowly walked back toward the kitchen. Min Jun finished his phone call. He put his phone back in his pocket and stood there calmly. Who did you call? Ji-won demanded. Your lawyer? Your mommy? Someone to complain to? I called some colleagues, Min Jun said simply. They'll be here soon. Colleagues? Hana repeated, looking confused. What does that mean? Before Min Jun could answer, the elderly woman from earlier stood up from her table. She walked slowly toward the counter using her cane. Her face looked determined. Excuse me, the elderly woman said in her accented English. I want to say something. This man did nothing wrong. He was polite. He just asked for his correct order. You two were very rude to him, just like you were rude to me earlier. Ji-won turned to face the elderly woman. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please go back to your seat. No, the elderly woman said firmly. I will speak. You laughed at my accent. You made me repeat my order many times even though you understood me. You were mean to me. I saw you do the same thing to him. She pointed at the construction worker. And to that man too. The construction worker stood up from his table. He walked over and stood next to the elderly woman. She's right. You gave me the wrong order on purpose and then said I was lying when I complained about it. You treat customers like garbage here. Ji-won's face turned even redder. Now she was angry at multiple people. Both of you need to mind your own business. This is between me and him, she pointed at Min Jun. Actually, it concerns all of us, the construction worker said. We're all customers here. We all paid money for food and service. We all deserve to be treated with respect. Hana stepped forward, trying to help Ji-won. You're all ganging up on us. We're just trying to do our jobs. You don't understand how hard it is to work in fast food. I worked in restaurants for 20 years, the elderly woman said quietly. I know it is hard work, but hard work is not an excuse to be cruel to people. Min Jun watched this unfold with careful attention. He said nothing. He let the other customers speak. Their testimony was important. Their experiences matched the complaints in his folder. This was not just about one bad interaction. This was a pattern. More customers entered the restaurant. A young couple came in, saw the tense situation at the counter, and hesitated near the door. They looked at each other uncertain. Ji-won noticed them. Welcome to Burger Palace. We'll be with you in a minute. She tried to sound cheerful, but her voice was strained. Then she turned back to Min Jun and the others. She lowered her voice slightly. Look, this is getting out of hand. You all need to drop this and move on. Or what? The construction worker asked. You'll call the police? Go ahead. I'd love to tell them how you treat paying customers. At that moment, the glass door opened again. But this time, it was not a regular customer. 2 people in official-looking clothes walked in. One was a woman in her 40s carrying a clipboard and a large bag. The other was a man in his 30s wearing a jacket that said Health Inspector on the back. Behind them, a police officer in uniform stepped inside. The entire restaurant went silent. Jiwon and Hana stared at the newcomers with confused expressions. Taemin came back out from the kitchen looking surprised. "What's going on?" Jiwon said, her voice suddenly much less confident. "Who are you people?" The woman with the clipboard smiled professionally. "I'm Inspector Sarah Chen from the State Health Department. This is Inspector David Martinez. We're here to conduct an inspection of this establishment." "An inspection?" Jiwon repeated. Her face had gone pale. We just had an inspection last month. We passed everything." "This is an unscheduled inspection," Inspector Chen explained. "We received multiple complaints about this location. We're here to investigate those complaints." Jiwon looked panicked now. But you can't just show up without warning." "That's not fair," Inspector Martinez spoke up. "Actually, we can. Health and safety inspections can happen at any time without notice. That's standard procedure." Hana was now standing very still. Her earlier confidence was completely gone. She looked scared. The police officer stepped forward and nodded at Minjun. "Everything okay here, Inspector Park?" That's when everything changed. Jiwon and Hana both turned to stare at Minjun. Their eyes went wide. The color drained from their faces. Their mouths opened slightly in shock. "Inspector Park?" Jiwon said weakly. Minjun reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, calmly, he pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open to reveal his official credentials and badge. The badge reflected the fluorescent lights above. It was gold and very official looking. "My name is Minjun Park," he said in a clear professional voice. "I'm a senior health and labor inspector for the State Regulatory Board. I've been conducting an undercover investigation of this establishment based on numerous complaints filed over the past 3 months. Complete silence filled the restaurant. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the pop music from the speakers seemed to fade into the background. Jiwon's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Hana took a step backward, her hand covering her mouth. Taemin's eyes widened, but he did not look scared. He looked almost relieved. "An undercover investigation?" Jiwon finally managed to say. Her voice was barely a whisper. "That's correct," Minjun confirmed. "I've been observing this location. I witnessed how you treated this elderly woman when she tried to order. I saw how you gave this man the wrong food and refused to fix it. I experienced your rude behavior myself when I placed my order. I've observed multiple health code violations in your kitchen, and I've documented all of it." Inspector Chen opened her bag and pulled out a camera. "We'll need to do a complete inspection of the premises now. Kitchen, storage areas, employee areas, everything." Inspector Martinez was already walking toward the kitchen. "I'll start back here," he called out. Jiwon found her voice again, but now it was panicked and desperate. "Wait, please. I didn't know who you were. I was just having a bad day. If I had known you were an inspector, I would have..." "Would have what?" Minjun interrupted calmly. "Treated me with respect? Fixed my order? Been polite? That's exactly the problem. Every customer deserves to be treated well, not just people who you think are important. Not just people you think might cause you trouble." "But I didn't mean..." Jiwon started. "You told me to get out of your restaurant," Minjun continued. "You refused to fix a simple mistake. You accused me of trying to scam you for free food. You raised your voice at me. You threatened to have me removed, and I watched you do similar things to other customers. This isn't about personal revenge. This is about protecting people who can't defend themselves." Hana was now crying. Tears ran down her face. "We're going to lose our jobs, aren't we?" she said quietly. The elderly woman spoke up again. "You should have thought about that before you were cruel to people." The construction worker nodded. "Actions have consequences. Maybe you'll think twice before treating people like dirt next time." Inspector Chen walked over to the elderly woman and the construction worker. "I'm going to need statements from both of you about what you witnessed today. Would you be willing to provide that?" Both of them nodded immediately. "Absolutely," the construction worker said. "I'll tell you everything." The police officer pulled out a notebook. "I'll take their statements while you do the inspection." More customers had gathered near the door now. They sensed something important was happening. Some of them had their phones out recording. This would probably be on social media within hours. From the kitchen, Inspector Martinez called out, "Inspector Park, you need to see this." Minjun walked toward the kitchen. Jiwon and Hana stood frozen at the counter, not knowing what to do. Taemin stepped aside to let Minjun pass. When Minjun entered the kitchen, he saw immediately what Inspector Martinez had found. The reality was even worse than what he had observed from the dining area. And this was only the beginning of what they would discover. Minjun stepped into the kitchen behind the counter. What he saw made his professional instincts go on high alert. Inspector Martinez was standing near the walk-in refrigerator with his hands on his hips, shaking his head slowly. "Look at this," Martinez said, pointing to the temperature log sheet on the wall. "These logs haven't been properly filled out in over a week. Half the entries are blank. The other half look like they were all written in the same handwriting at the same time. Someone clearly falsified these records." Minjun walked over and examined the clipboard. Martinez was right. The temperature readings were supposed to be recorded every 4 hours. But someone had obviously filled out several days' worth of logs all at once. The handwriting was identical. The pen ink was the same color throughout. Some entries even showed temperatures taken at times when the restaurant was closed. "That's not all," Martinez continued. He opened the walk-in refrigerator door. "Come look at this." Inside the refrigerator, the situation was worse. Several containers of prepared food sat uncovered. Raw chicken was stored on a shelf above prepared vegetables, which meant if the chicken dripped, it would contaminate the food below. The thermometer on the wall showed the temperature at 45 degrees Fahrenheit. It should have been between 33 and 38 degrees. "This refrigerator is not cold enough," Minjun observed. "Food stored at 45 degrees is in the danger zone for bacterial growth." Martinez nodded and made notes on his clipboard. "Multiple violations here. Improper storage temperatures, uncovered food, raw meat stored above ready-to-eat items, falsified safety logs." They walked back out into the main kitchen area. Inspector Chen had joined them now. She was examining the prep station where food was assembled. "Look at these cutting boards," Chen said, pointing. "They're supposed to be color-coded. Red for raw meat, green for vegetables, blue for seafood. But they're all mixed up. I can see knife marks on this green board that has raw chicken residue on it." Minjun photographed everything with his official camera. Each violation was documented carefully. He checked the hand-washing station. The soap dispenser was empty. There were no paper towels, only a dirty cloth towel hanging from a hook. "No soap for hand-washing," Minjun noted. "That's a critical violation." Taemin had been standing near the grill, watching nervously. Now he spoke up quietly. "I've been asking Jiwon to order more soap for 3 days. She said it wasn't in the budget this week." Inspector Chen turned to look at him. "What's your name?" "Taemin Choi," he answered. "I work the grill and prep station." "How long have you worked here?" Chen asked. "About 7 months," Taemin said. "Have you noticed other problems? Besides the soap?" Chen's voice was kind but professional. Taemin hesitated. He looked toward the front counter where Jiwon stood. She was watching them through the service window. Her face was full of fear and warning. She shook her head slightly at Taemin, silently telling him not to say anything. Minjun saw this. "Taemin, you cannot be punished for telling the truth to health inspectors. It's actually illegal for your employer to retaliate against you for reporting safety violations. You're protected by law." Taemin took a deep breath. "There are a lot of problems," he said quietly. "The refrigerator has been running warm for 2 weeks. I told Jiwon about it, but she said calling a repair person was too expensive. She said to just keep the door closed as much as possible." "What else?" Martinez prompted. "Sometimes Jiwon tells me to serve food that's been dropped on the floor. She says to just wipe it off and put it in the wrapper. She says customers will never know the difference." Taemin's voice was shaking now. "I didn't want to do it, but she's my boss. She said she'd fire me if I didn't follow her instructions." Chen wrote rapidly in her notebook. "Has she done this recently?" "Yesterday," Taemin admitted. "A whole batch of chicken tenders fell on the floor. I wanted to throw them away and make new ones. But Jiwon got angry. She said we couldn't waste food. She made me pick them up, rinse them under water, and serve them." Minjun felt a wave of concern. This was beyond just poor management. This was dangerous. People could get seriously sick from eating food that had been on the floor. "Are there other issues?" Minjun asked gently. Taemin nodded. "The grease trap hasn't been cleaned in months. The freezer door doesn't seal properly. Sometimes the meat arrives partially thawed. and Jiwan tells me to refreeze it instead of throwing it away. She changes the dates on food packaging when things expire and—" He paused. "Go on," Chen encouraged. "And she's been stealing from the register," Taemin said. "She takes cash out and doesn't record it. She blames shortages on other employees. 2 people got fired last month because Jiwan said they were stealing, but I'm pretty sure it was her all along." This was serious. Very serious. Minjun exchanged glances with the other inspectors. They had come expecting to find rude customer service and maybe a few minor health violations. Instead, they were uncovering systematic neglect, safety violations, and potential theft. From the front of the restaurant, Jiwan's voice suddenly rang out. "Taemin! Get out here right now." Taemin flinched. He looked scared. "You don't have to go," Minjun said firmly. "You're giving a statement to officials. She cannot punish you for this." But Taemin looked uncertain. "She's still my boss. I need this job. I have rent to pay." Inspector Chen put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me carefully. What you're telling us is going to help a lot of people. It's going to make this workplace safer. And if your employer tries to fire you or punish you for speaking to us, that's called retaliation. It's illegal. You can sue them for it. We'll document everything you've told us. You're doing the right thing." Taemin nodded slowly. He took a shaky breath. "There's more," he said quietly. "It's not just about the food safety. It's about how she treats employees too." "Tell us," Martinez said. "Jiwan makes us clock out during slow periods, but we still have to keep working. She says it saves on labor costs, so we don't get paid for those hours." Taemin's words came faster now, like a dam breaking. "She also takes our tips. When customers leave cash tips, she puts them in her pocket. She says tips are for management, not regular workers. And she makes us work when we're sick. Last month I had a fever and told her I needed to go home. She said if I left I'd be fired. So I worked my whole shift while I was sick. I was handling food while I had a fever." Minjun felt his jaw tighten. Every single thing Taemin described was a violation. Wage theft, tip theft, forcing sick employees to handle food. These were serious labor law violations on top of the health code problems. "Has anyone tried to report these issues before?" Chen asked. "One person did," Taemin said, "about 2 months ago. A woman named Sandra who worked the register. She called the main office to complain. The next week, Jiwan fired her. She said Sandra was always late and made too many mistakes. But that wasn't true. Sandra was a good worker. Jiwan fired her because she complained. "Do you have Sandra's contact information?" Martinez asked. "I have her phone number," Taemin said. "I can give it to you." While the inspectors continued documenting everything in the kitchen, Minjun walked back to the front counter. The elderly woman and the construction worker were sitting at a table, giving their statements to the police officer. Other customers had left, probably not wanting to wait during the inspection. A few curious people stood outside the windows looking in. Jiwan stood behind the counter with her arms crossed tightly. Hana sat on a stool near the register. Both women looked terrified now. Their earlier arrogance was completely gone. "Inspector Park," Jiwan said as he approached. Her voice was different now, small, pleading. "Please, can we talk? I can explain everything." "I'm listening," Minjun said neutrally. "I was having a really bad day," Jiwan started. "My car broke down this morning. I got into a fight with my boyfriend. I have a lot of stress in my life. I shouldn't have taken it out on customers. I know that now. I'm sorry." "That's not an explanation," Minjun said calmly. "That's an excuse. Having a bad day doesn't justify treating people cruelly, and it certainly doesn't explain the health code violations we're finding." "What health violations?" Jiwan tried to look confused. "We're very careful about food safety here." "Don't lie to me," Minjun said firmly but not angrily. "Your employee Taemin just told us about numerous safety violations. Serving food that fell on the floor, not maintaining proper refrigeration temperatures, falsifying temperature logs, forcing sick employees to work with food. Should I continue?" Jiwan's face went white. "Taemin said all that?" "He's lying!" "He's trying to get me in trouble." "Why would he lie?" Minjun asked. "What would he gain from it?" I don't know. Maybe he's mad because I've been tough on him lately. Employees get revenge by making up stories," Jiwan said desperately. At that moment, Inspector Martinez came out from the kitchen carrying a large plastic bag. Inside the bag was a container of what looked like chicken salad. He held it up. "This container was in your refrigerator," Martinez said. The label says it expired 6 days ago. But someone crossed out the date and wrote a new date. That's illegal. You cannot serve expired food to customers. Ji-won stared at the bag. She had no response. Inspector Chen came out next. We found more expired items with changed dates. We found meat that was improperly stored. We found evidence of pest infestation in the dry storage area. We found cleaning chemicals stored next to food items. We found so many violations that we're going to need several hours to document everything. This restaurant is going to be shut down immediately, Martinez announced. It's not safe for public use. What? Ji-won's voice rose in panic. You can't shut us down. This is my livelihood. You should have thought about that before you violated dozens of health and safety regulations, Chen said firmly. The police officer finished taking statements from the elderly woman and the construction worker. He walked over to join the group at the counter. I have statements from 2 witnesses describing discriminatory behavior, verbal abuse, and refusal of service, the officer said. That's enough for me to file an official report. At that moment, the front door burst open. A man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit rushed in. He looked around frantically at all the official people standing in his restaurant. His face showed confusion and worry. What's going on here? He demanded. I'm Robert Patterson, the owner of this establishment. Someone called and said there were police and health inspectors here. Min-jun stepped forward and showed his credentials again. Mr. Patterson, I'm Inspector Min-jun Park. We're conducting an investigation of your restaurant based on multiple complaints. We found numerous health code violations and evidence of labor law violations. Your restaurant is being shut down immediately pending a full investigation. Patterson's mouth fell open. He looked at Ji-won. What did you do? He asked her in a shocked voice. Ji-won started crying now. I didn't do anything. They're making things up. This is all a misunderstanding. But Patterson wasn't listening to her anymore. He was looking at the inspectors, the police officer, the witnesses, and the evidence they had collected. His face showed a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. The truth was coming out, and there was no stopping it now. Robert Patterson stood in the middle of his restaurant looking like his entire world was falling apart. He turned slowly, taking in the scene. Official inspectors with clipboards and cameras. A police officer. Witnesses giving statements. Evidence bags filled with expired food. His shift manager crying at the counter. Someone please explain to me what is happening, Patterson said, his voice strained. I don't understand. Min-jun gestured toward a table. Mr. Patterson, perhaps we should sit down. This is going to take some time to explain. Patterson nodded weakly and sat down. Inspector Chen and Inspector Martinez joined them. The police officer stood nearby, still writing in his notebook. Mr. Patterson, Min-jun began. Over the past 3 months, our office has received 17 formal complaints about this location. Complaints about rude and discriminatory treatment of customers. Complaints about unsanitary conditions. Complaints from former employees about wage theft and unsafe working conditions. 17 complaints? Patterson repeated. He looked genuinely shocked. I never heard about any complaints. That's part of the problem, Chen said. According to what we've learned, your shift manager Ji-won has been intercepting complaints. When customers called the main office, she told them the issues were resolved. When employees tried to report problems, she either ignored them or fired them. Patterson turned to look at Ji-won. Is this true? Ji-won wiped her eyes. Some people just complain about everything. I was trying to protect the business. I didn't want you bothered with stupid issues. Stupid issues? Martinez repeated. Food safety violations are not stupid issues. Labor law violations are not stupid issues. Discriminating against customers is not a stupid issue. Patterson put his head in his hands. What exactly did you find? For the next 20 minutes, the inspectors went through their findings. Each violation was explained in detail. The falsified temperature logs, the improperly stored food, the expired items with changed dates, the malfunctioning refrigerator that hadn't been repaired, the lack of proper hand washing supplies, the pest infestation, the cleaning chemicals stored near food. Then they moved on to the labor violations. Employees forced to clock out but continue working. Tips being stolen by management. Sick workers handling food. Employees fired for making complaints. Patterson's face grew paler with each new revelation. I had no idea, he kept saying. I had absolutely no idea any of this was happening. Mr. Patterson, Min-jun said carefully. While I believe you may not have known the details, you bear responsibility as the owner. Multiple complaints were filed with your corporate office. Online reviews for this location mention many of these same issues. As the owner, you have a legal obligation to monitor your business and ensure it follows health and labor regulations. I trusted Ji-won to run things, Patterson said weakly. She's been the manager here for 2 years. She always told me everything was fine. The numbers looked good. I thought she was doing a great job. The numbers looked good because she was stealing wages from employees and cutting corners on safety, Chen pointed out. She was making your profit margins better by breaking the law. Patterson looked sick. What happens now? Martinez pulled out an official document. This is an immediate closure order. Your restaurant cannot serve food until all violations are corrected, and you pass a complete re-inspection. Based on what we've found, that will take weeks, possibly months. We're also referring this case to the Labor Department for investigation, Chen added. They'll conduct their own review of your payroll records, employee complaints, and labor practices. The police officer spoke up. And I'm filing a report about the discriminatory behavior toward customers. That may result in civil rights complaints being filed against the business. Patterson looked like he might cry. This is going to ruin me. The closure alone will cost thousands of dollars. If I have to pay fines and back wages, he trailed off. You should have been paying proper wages all along, Min-jun said without sympathy. You should have been maintaining health standards all along. These problems didn't appear overnight. They built up over time because no one was supervising properly. What about Ji-won? Patterson asked. What happens to her? That's up to you as the owner, Chen said. But I would strongly recommend termination. She's the source of most of these problems. She lied to you, violated regulations, stole from employees, and endangered public health. Patterson turned to look at Ji-won. His face was a mixture of anger and disappointment. You're fired, he said flatly. Effective immediately. Turn in your keys and name tag. Security will escort you out. Ji-won's eyes widened. You can't fire me. This isn't fair. I was doing what I thought was best. You were serving floor food to customers. Patterson's voice rose. You were stealing from employees. You were falsifying safety records. How is any of that doing what's best? I was trying to keep costs down. Ji-won shouted back. You're always complaining about expenses. You're always saying we need better profit margins. I was just doing what you wanted. I never told you to break the law. Patterson stood up now, his face red. I never told you to treat customers like garbage. I never told you to serve expired food. Don't you dare blame this on me. The police officer stepped between them. Everyone needs to calm down. Ji-won grabbed her purse from under the counter. Her face was streaked with tears and anger. Fine, I don't need this job anyway. This place is a dump. You're a terrible boss. I hope your whole business fails. She stormed toward the door. Wait, Min-jun called out. Ms. Kim, you're not free to leave just yet. We need a formal statement from you. And depending on what the labor investigation finds, you may be facing criminal charges for wage theft. Ji-won stopped at the door. She turned around slowly. Criminal charges? Wage theft is a crime, Chen explained. If you deliberately withheld pay from employees, you can be prosecuted. Ji-won's defiant expression crumbled. She looked terrified now. I want a lawyer. That's your right, the police officer said. But you still need to stay and give a statement. While Ji-won reluctantly sat down to talk with the officer, Min-jun turned his attention to Hana. The young woman had been silent through most of this, sitting on her stool and watching everything unfold. Ms. Lee, Min-jun said gently, did you know about all of these violations? Hana looked up with red, puffy eyes. Some of them, she admitted quietly. I knew Ji-won was mean to customers. I saw her be rude lots of times, and I knew she changed dates on some food, but I didn't know about all the other stuff, the wage theft and the floor food and everything else. But you participated in the rude behavior toward customers, Min-jun pointed out. You laughed at the elderly woman's accent. You accused the construction worker of lying. You were hostile toward me. Hana nodded miserably. I know, I'm so sorry. Ji-won was my boss, and she set the tone for everything. She acted like customers were annoying, so I started acting that way too. She said treating people badly would make them leave faster, which would make our job easier. Tears rolled down her face. I know that's not an excuse. I should have been better. I'm really, really sorry. Min-jun studied her carefully. Unlike Jiwon, Hana seemed genuinely remorseful. She looked young and scared. She had clearly been following Jiwon's lead rather than creating the problems herself. "Mr. Patterson," Min-jun said, "what do you want to do about Ms. Lee?" Patterson looked at Hana. "How long have you worked here?" 6 months, Hana said quietly. "Did you know about the wage theft? Did you know Jiwon was making people work off the clock?" "No," Hana said firmly. "I swear I didn't know about that. Jiwon handled all the time cards and schedules. I just worked my shifts and went home." Patterson thought for a moment. "Hana, I'm going to suspend you without pay for 2 weeks. You'll need to complete customer service training and ethics training. If you show genuine improvement and the inspectors don't find evidence that you were involved in the serious violations, you can come back to work. But if I ever hear about you treating customers rudely again, you're done. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Hana said, nodding eagerly. "Thank you. I promise I'll be better. I'll take any training you want. I'll never act like that again." Patterson turned to Tae-min, who had been standing quietly near the kitchen. "Tae-min, thank you for being honest with the inspectors. I'm sorry you were put in such a difficult position." "It's okay," Tae-min said. "I just want things to be better." "They will be," Patterson promised. "When we reopen, you'll get a raise. And I'm promoting you to shift supervisor. You'll help train the new staff we bring in." Tae-min's eyes widened. "Really? Thank you, Mr. Patterson." "You earned it," Patterson said. "You tried to do the right thing even when it was hard. That's the kind of person I want in leadership." Inspector Chen cleared her throat. "Mr. Patterson, there's still the matter of the back wages owed to employees. We'll need access to all your payroll records. Every employee who was forced to work off the clock needs to be paid for those hours, with penalties." "How much are we talking about?" Patterson asked nervously. "We won't know until we review the records," Martinez said. "But based on what we've heard, it could be thousands of dollars. Maybe tens of thousands depending on how long this has been going on." Patterson closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll cooperate fully. I'll provide whatever records you need. I'll pay whatever is owed. You'll also need to contact all former employees who might have been affected," Chen added, "including the workers who were fired. They may be entitled to back pay and compensation for wrongful termination." "I'll do it," Patterson said. "I'll make this right. I promise." Min-jun pulled out a business card and handed it to Patterson. "This is my direct number. Over the next few weeks, you'll be working with multiple agencies. Health Department, Labor Department, possibly civil rights investigators. It's going to be complicated and expensive. I recommend hiring a lawyer who specializes in business compliance." Patterson took the card with a shaky hand. "Thank you, Inspector Park, and I mean that sincerely. If you hadn't come here today, these problems would have continued. People could have gotten sick. Employees would have kept being exploited. You did the right thing." "I was just doing my job," Min-jun said simply, "but I appreciate your cooperation." The police officer finished taking Jiwon's statement. "You're free to go now, Ms. Kim, but don't leave the state. The district attorney may want to talk to you." Jiwon didn't say anything. She just walked out the door without looking at anyone. Her earlier arrogance had completely disappeared. She looked defeated and scared. Inspector Chen and Inspector Martinez spent the next 2 hours completing their inspection. They photographed everything. They collected samples. They filled out forms and wrote detailed reports. Min-jun helped them document every violation. The elderly woman and the construction worker stayed for a while, making sure their statements were complete. Before they left, both of them thanked Min-jun personally. "You helped people today," the elderly woman said, patting his arm gently. "Not just us, but all the future customers who would have been treated badly." "Thank you. You stood up for what's right," the construction worker added. "We need more people like you." As the sun began to set, the inspection team finally finished. They posted the closure notice on the front door. The restaurant would remain closed until every single violation was fixed and verified. Patterson stood outside, staring at the closure sign. Min-jun walked over to him. "This feels like the end," Patterson said quietly. "It's not the end," Min-jun replied. "It's an opportunity to rebuild the right way, to create a business that treats people with dignity and follows the law. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Patterson nodded slowly. "I guess I have a lot of work ahead of me." "Yes, you do," Min-jun agreed. "But the fact that you're willing to acknowledge the problems and fix them shows character. A lot of owners would just make excuses and blame everyone else." As Min-jun drove away from Burger Palace that evening, He felt satisfied. Not happy exactly. This kind of work was never pleasant, but it was necessary. People deserved to be treated with respect whether they were customers or employees. Businesses needed to be held accountable. His phone buzzed with a message from his supervisor. Great work today. The story is already on social media. People are calling it karma. They're glad someone finally stood up to that place. Min-jun smiled slightly. People could call it karma if they wanted, or revenge. But to him it was simply justice. It was making sure rules existed for a reason were actually enforced. He thought about his next case. There was always another complaint to investigate. Another business cutting corners. Another person being treated unfairly, and he would be there to make sure the truth came out. 3 months had passed since the day Min-jun shut down Burger Palace. It had been a long 3 months filled with paperwork, investigations, and legal proceedings. But finally, the restaurant was ready to reopen. Min-jun parked his car in the same spot he had used 3 months earlier. But this time he was not undercover. He wore his official inspector badge on his belt. He carried his clipboard and inspection forms. This was the final check before the restaurant could serve customers again. As he walked toward the building, he noticed the changes immediately. The exterior had been repainted. New signs hung in the windows. The parking lot had been repaved. Even from outside, the place looked different. Cleaner, more professional. He pushed open the door. The bell rang above his head just like before, but that was where the similarities ended. The inside of the restaurant had been completely transformed. Fresh paint covered the walls in warm, welcoming colors. New tables and chairs replaced the old worn ones. Modern lighting fixtures hung from the ceiling. Everything looked clean and organized. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 40s wearing a crisp uniform. Her name tag read Maria Santos, General Manager. She smiled warmly when she saw Min-jun. Inspector Park. She said cheerfully, "Welcome. We've been expecting you." "Good morning, Ms. Santos," Min-jun replied professionally. "I'm here for the final re-inspection before you can reopen." "Of course. We're ready for you. Let me show you everything we've done." Before they could begin, Taemin emerged from the kitchen. He wore a new uniform with a name tag that read, Tai Min Choi, Shift Supervisor. He looked different too. More confident. More professional. He smiled when he saw Min-jun. "Inspector Park, it's good to see you again," Taemin said. "Congratulations on your promotion," Min-jun said, shaking his hand. "How have things been?" "So much better," Taemin said enthusiastically. "Everything is different now. We have proper equipment, proper training, a manager who actually cares about doing things right." Maria gestured toward the kitchen. "Shall we start the inspection back here?" Min-jun followed her into the kitchen. The change was remarkable. Brand new equipment gleamed under bright LED lights. Color-coded cutting boards hung on the wall in the correct order. A large temperature monitoring system was mounted where everyone could see it. Digital thermometers sat in each storage unit. "We replaced the old refrigerator completely," Maria explained. "This new unit maintains perfect temperature automatically. It also has an alarm system that alerts us if the temperature rises above safe levels." Min-jun checked the temperature logs. They were filled out properly. Every entry was complete. Different handwriting showed that multiple employees were taking responsibility for monitoring. He opened the walk-in refrigerator. Inside, everything was organized perfectly. Raw meats on the bottom shelves. Prepared foods on the top shelves. Everything was covered, labeled, and dated properly. The thermometer showed 36 degrees. "Perfect, excellent," Min-jun said, making notes on his clipboard. "This is exactly what I want to see." They moved to the prep station. The cutting boards were properly color-coded and clean. The hand-washing station had fresh soap, paper towels, and clear instructions posted above it. Cleaning supplies were stored in a separate area, far away from food. Taemin showed him the new procedures. Every employee goes through 4 days of training now before they work alone. Food safety, customer service, proper procedures. Maria makes sure we all understand why these rules exist, not just how to follow them. "We also have unannounced internal inspections twice a week," Maria added. "I check everything myself. If I find any problems, we fix them immediately." Min-jun spent over an hour inspecting the kitchen. He checked every storage area. He tested all the equipment. He reviewed all the logs and documentation. Everything was perfect. Not a single violation. The kitchen passes inspection, Min-jun announced. This is outstanding work. Maria beamed with pride. Thank you. We worked very hard to get it right. They moved to the front counter area. Here too, everything had changed. New registers, new menu boards, a suggestion box mounted on the wall where customers could leave feedback. A large sign displayed the health inspection grade prominently. But the biggest change was not in the equipment or the decor. It was in the people. A young man stood at one register. His name tag read David Chen, team member. He was helping a customer order, speaking politely and patiently. He smiled and made eye contact. He repeated the order back to make sure it was correct. At another register, Min-jun saw a familiar face. Hana stood there helping an elderly customer. But this Hana was completely different from the rude, dismissive girl from 3 months ago. Would you like to try our senior discount? Hana was saying to the elderly man. We offer 10% off for customers over 65, and our chicken sandwich is very popular. It comes with fresh vegetables and your choice of sauce. The elderly man smiled. That sounds wonderful. You're very kind. It's my pleasure, Hana said warmly. She took his order carefully, repeated it back to him, and processed his payment with a genuine smile. Your order will be ready in about 5 minutes, sir. Please have a seat and we'll bring it to you. The elderly man walked to a table looking pleased. When he was out of earshot, Hana noticed Min-jun watching her. She came over immediately. Inspector Park, she said. Her voice was respectful but also carried genuine warmth. I didn't know you were coming today. Final inspection, Min-jun explained. How have you been, Ms. Lee? I've been good, Hana said. Really good, actually. After my suspension, I went through all the training programs Mr. Patterson required. Customer service, ethics, food safety, everything. It changed how I think about this job. How so? Min-jun asked. Before, I thought it was just fast food. Just a job. Just a way to make money. I didn't think it mattered how I treated people. Hana's voice was sincere, but the training made me realize that every customer is a person who deserves respect. That elderly man I just helped? He reminded me of the lady I was rude to 3 months ago. I felt so ashamed remembering how I treated her. You've clearly learned from the experience, Min-jun observed. I have, Hana said firmly. I'll never treat people like that again. I promise. And if I see other employees being rude, I speak up now. We all hold each other accountable. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more customers. A construction crew came in for lunch. 5 men in work clothes, dusty from a job site. Min-jun watched carefully to see how they would be treated. David greeted them warmly. Welcome to Burger Palace. Come on in, gentlemen. Don't worry about the dust. We're happy to serve you. The construction workers smiled and approached the counter. They placed their orders. David was patient and friendly. He asked questions to make sure he understood correctly. He offered suggestions. He treated them with complete respect. When the food came out, David checked each order carefully before handing it over. Sir, you ordered no pickles on this burger, correct? Let me just verify. He opened the wrapper to check. Perfect. And here are extra napkins for everyone. Thank you for choosing us today. The construction workers took their food to a table, looking pleased with the service. One of them said to his co-workers, This place really changed. Remember how it used to be? Rude staff, wrong orders, terrible service. This is way better. Min-jun felt a sense of satisfaction hearing that. This was why he did his job. Not to punish businesses, but to improve them. To make sure people were treated right. Robert Patterson arrived during the inspection. He looked different too. Less stressed. More engaged. He greeted Min-jun warmly. Inspector Park, thank you for coming, Patterson said. I know this final inspection is just a formality, but it means a lot to get your approval. It's not just a formality, Min-jun corrected. I'm doing a complete inspection, but I have to say I'm very impressed with what I've seen so far. Patterson nodded. The past 3 months have been the hardest of my life. The closure cost me over $60,000. The back wages, fines, legal fees, and renovation costs added up to almost $90,000 more. I had to take out a loan to cover everything. That's significant, Min-jun acknowledged. But it was worth it, Patterson continued. I learned that cutting corners and ignoring problems costs more in the long run than doing things right from the beginning. I also learned that I can't just trust someone else to run my business. I need to be involved. I need to pay attention. Those are valuable lessons, Minjun said. I visit every single day now, Patterson said. I talk to employees. I talk to customers. I check the systems. Maria is an excellent manager, but I'm still the owner. The responsibility is ultimately mine. That's the right attitude, Minjun agreed. Patterson lowered his voice. I also wanted to tell you that we tracked down all the former employees who were affected by G1's wage theft. We paid them everything they were owed plus 20% extra as an apology. Some of them even wanted to come back to work here. We rehired 3 of them. That's good to hear, Minjun said. And G1? Patterson added. She's facing criminal charges. The district attorney decided to prosecute her for wage theft and fraud. She might go to jail. Minjun felt no satisfaction in hearing that. He did not enjoy seeing people punished. But consequences were necessary. G1 had hurt a lot of people through her actions. She had to be held accountable. What about the employees she fired unfairly? Minjun asked. We reached settlements with all of them, Patterson said. They were compensated for wrongful termination. One of them, Sandra, is actually working here again. She's training new employees on how to handle customer complaints properly. Minjun completed the rest of his inspection. He checked employee certifications. He reviewed training records. He examined financial systems to ensure wages were being paid correctly. He tested equipment. He checked every detail, everything passed. Not a single violation. Mr. Patterson, Minjun said officially, I'm pleased to inform you that Burger Palace has passed its final re-inspection. You are cleared to reopen for business. A cheer went up from the employees who had gathered to hear the result. Taman and Hannah high-fived each other. Maria hugged Patterson. David smiled broadly. Everyone looked happy and relieved. Thank you, Inspector Park, Patterson said, shaking his hand firmly. Thank you for holding us accountable. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing us how to be better. You did the work, Minjun replied. I just pointed out the problems. You're the one who chose to fix them properly. Patterson turned to his employees. Okay, everyone, we reopen tomorrow morning. But tonight we're having a staff celebration dinner. You've all worked so hard. You deserve to celebrate, the employees cheered again. They had earned this victory. They had transformed a failing, problematic restaurant into a place that valued people. As Minjun prepared to leave, the elderly man that Hannah had served earlier approached him. Excuse me, are you a health inspector? Yes, sir, Minjun replied. I just wanted to say thank you, the man said. I heard what happened here 3 months ago. I heard about how you stood up to the rude staff and made them accountable. I'm glad you did. This place is wonderful now. The young lady at the counter was so kind to me. It made my whole day better. I'm glad to hear that, Minjun said sincerely. The man patted his arm and walked away. Minjun watched him go, feeling that familiar sense of purpose. This was why he did this work. Before leaving, Minjun approached the counter one last time. Hannah was there and he wanted to tell her something. Ms. Lee, he said, I want you to know that I'm proud of how far you've come. You made mistakes, but you learned from them. That shows real character. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Inspector Park. That means a lot coming from you. You changed my life that day. You made me realize I needed to be better. You chose to be better, Minjun corrected. I just provided the wake-up call. As Minjun walked to his car, he looked back at Burger Palace one more time. Through the windows, he could see employees working together. He could see customers being served with respect. He could see a business operating the way it should. His phone buzzed. It was his supervisor. Good job on the Burger Palace case. We have a new complaint that just came in. Another restaurant. Similar issues. Can you handle it? Minjun smiled and texted back. Send me the details. I'm on it. He got in his car and started the engine. There would always be another case. Another business that needed to be held accountable. Another group of people who needed someone to stand up for them. But cases like Burger Palace reminded him that change was possible. Redemption was real. People and businesses could learn and improve. As he drove away, Minjun thought about the journey from that first undercover visit to today's re-inspection. It had not been about revenge. It had never been about revenge. Revenge was personal. Revenge was about hurting people who hurt you. This was about something bigger. It was about dignity, about respect, about making sure that everyone, whether they were serving food or being served, was treated like a human being who mattered. That elderly woman who had been mocked could now return and be treated with kindness. That construction worker who had been given wrong food intentionally could now get proper service. Future employees would not be stolen from or forced to work while sick. Future customers would not be subjected to cruelty and contempt. Min-jun had not executed revenge on arrogant workers. He had executed justice. He had enforced the rules that society created to protect people. He had held those in power accountable for their abuse of that power, and in doing so he had created ripples. Burger Palace was better now. But the story had spread. Other restaurants had heard what happened. Other managers realized they could not mistreat people without consequences. Other employees felt empowered to speak up about problems. One case, one inspection, one moment of standing up for what was right. And it had changed everything. That was the real power of justice. Not revenge, justice. As Min-jun headed toward his next assignment, he felt ready. Ready to investigate. Ready to document. Ready to hold people accountable. Ready to protect those who could not protect themselves. Because that was his job. That was his purpose. And he was good at it. The shock that spread across Burger Palace that day 3 months ago had not been about one undercover agent humiliating some rude workers. It had been about the moment when people realize that actions have consequences, that treating others badly will eventually catch up to you, that someone is always watching, always caring, always ready to stand up for what is right. And Min-jun Park would continue to be that someone, one inspection at a time.